Good evening, guys. So this is 8 o'clock. Let's wait for a couple more minutes for others to join before we start our session. Thanks for joining in. Hi guys, good evening. Welcome again to another session to Design with You. So if this is your first time joining us, Design with You is a weekly session where we basically bring in experienced designers from different parts of design to come and talk to the community on different topics that we just hope will help designers to scale up. So last week we hosted Phrase UX to talk about heuristics in UI design, and tonight we are having Forbes, basically Oluwatobi Fabusuyi, to talk about designing for the fintech industry. So if just a brief about Forbes, he's a creative doer. One second, let me allow others join in. So he's a creative doer, engaging and insightful design professional who is motivated by a desire to solve problems, design thoughtful and engaging products with the intention to solve the user's needs by improving processes and customer experiences. One second. Okay. So for the next couple of minutes, we'll just give room to Forbes to enlighten us about designing for the fintech industry. He is one who has been in the space for quite some time, and his experience is vast. So Forbes, the floor is yours to enlighten us. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for bringing me up here, Eugene. And thanks for the introduction. So, if you please permit me to share my screen, I think I can possibly start from there. Okay, so while I'm trying to share my screen, I'm simply just going to say a little bit about myself. Fabusuyi by name, brand name Forbes. And yeah, I'm a product designer at Pash.co, building fastest one-click checkout for Africa. I typically design for a living, and that's what pays my bills. So that's just majorly. You can connect with me via mail, Twitter, Instagram. I'd always be happy to reply and to speak with anyone. So thank you so much for bringing me on here. I'm just going to go straight into why we are here today, designing for the fintech industry. So typically everyone says fintech. The word fintech is not strange to us in this part of Africa. That's typically Nigeria because we can see statistically speaking, more than 60% of the products that we have for startups in the Nigerian market are majorly fintech or fintech related solutions. So there are just so much things that we can pull around there. I'm going to start today by defining what fintech is entirely, right? So the word fintech, it's simply just finance and technology. It's simply just enabling finance through technology. It's not replacing finance. It's just enabling traditional finance through technology. So there's a definition that I have here. Simply just saying the applications and integrations of new technological advancements, computer programming and other technology to products and services in the financial industry. Very importantly is the fact that the financial industry already exists and will continue to exist, either fintech and that's like tech support with tech support, or through the normal traditional model. It will always still continue to exist. So fintech is no replacement. It's simply just enabling the system. So we talk about the industry as a whole itself. The industry has a lot in parts when it comes to fintech. When we talk about finance as a whole, We are talking about banking, we are talking about investment and saving, we are talking about cryptocurrency and blockchain, we are talking about machine learning, we are talking about trading, we are talking about insurance, we're talking about payments and lending. And I think one of the major ones that is so much what's it called, there were so much conversant with in this part of the world is simply just payments and lending. One day, any of us, like so many of us, could have at one point or the other been sent a text message by a loan company, or anyone is using Kuda Bank, which is like new banking system. Typically, almost everyone is into crypto using Binance or Trove or any other what's it called cryptocurrency supported platforms. You could also have used investments and savings in the likes of Bamboo and other things. You could have used machine learning and trading for trading sections. Also, you could have used insurance tech. Insurance tech is a sub under also fintech, typically just dealing with insurance and everything. Pretty much an elaborate system that enables finance through technology. Other fields that I probably did not put here, but still serves as a player in this field is the prop tech industry, simply just property tech, real estate, and sorting out those solutions through finance and technology. So I just want a feedback to be sure that you can hear me, Eugene.
Loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right, thank you. So typically, right, when we're talking about banking as a whole, we have like the digital bank now. An example is what would say Kuda is, right? They give digital, like they just enable digital access to normal traditional banking systems. So typically they do almost all, if not all, what traditional banking system does. But at this point in time, all technology enabled, typically do not have a branch, not that I know of. Or you couldn't say, oh, I work at that bank branch. So typically these companies just exist there and they work to ease finance even without a what's called a physical structure. We have other investments and savings, just like I mentioned before, and cryptocurrency and blockchain, Binance, Trove, but typically we have Bata who does what's it called, who does a bit of payments and lending. We have insurance tech. I'm typically just trying to find an example for insurance tech. And we have all machine learnings for smart contracts and co. So fintech as a whole, I'm still going to talk about fintech as a whole. It's not for the faint-hearted. So typically for us to be able to effectively design for any system, we need to understand the players in those systems. Who are the top dogs in those systems? What happens in those systems? What are the regulations? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? Who are those who are available in that system? How does that system work? And typically, how do you contribute to that system? So typically, right, there are several players um to fintech, the entire fintech industries. We have the regulators. So typically when we talk about the regulators, we all know the whole CBN, our whole entire CBN, that's for Nigeria. Typically just regulatory body for any financial institution, either it's being a fintech or a traditional institution. So typically these regulators are there to provide guidelines, to provide rules, to provide and to give what's it called regulatory conduct as to how financial activities should be performed in the industry. Well, over the last few months and years, we've faced quite a lot of upsurge in financial regulations and regulators in the what's it called the entire financial space for Nigeria. So we typically all know the old policies of you can't do more than $20 per day for international, you can't do more than this, you have to have this to do that. So typically those are the regulators. We have the service providers. These are people who leverage on what's it called on licenses from the regulator to provide certain services. An example of such companies would be the likes of Doja, would be the likes of what are these guys again? Sorry, I'm trying to remember the name. But the likes of Doja, the likes of Flutterwave, who have their APIs, who have an infrastructure ready, the likes of Okra, the likes of Mono, right? Where startups who are coming or products who are coming into the fintech space can leverage on the services that they provide through either API infrastructure or any other infrastructure that they might have to offer. So we have the liquidity provider. So one thing is this, right? Sorry. Okay, so one thing in this space is this, except you have certain licenses, you'd still need a liquidity provider, which is simply someone to provide you the cash to run around with business and to pull in and pull out money from the system. And you most of the times those liquidity providers could be individuals, they could be bank system, they could be the traditional or what's it called offline. Would I say offline? No, not typically offline because they're also technology enabled to provide liquidity to what's it called to any player in the system. And also we have the compliance providers. These are people who make sure that okay, the compliance rules that have been laid down by these regulators are typically being obeyed and being followed. So we have what's it called? I have this typical painting by the site that illustrates the life of a fintech startup. You are simply just faced with licenses to fix, you are faced with security, you are faced with verifications, you are faced with KYC, you are faced with regulations, you are faced with the machine learning algorithm to understand how the system works. So there's typically just so much to it. And understanding the players in this system are certain keys that we as designers and as fintech people who are in the fintech space needs to know, right? Okay, yeah, this certain regulation says this. It affects the flow of design, it affects the flow of onboarding, it affects this, it affects the limits of transaction. How do we push this out to the users? How do we talk about this? These are service providers that we use. This is what they offer us. This is how it affects the flow. So typically, right, understanding who the players are and what they do is a very, very important factor into being able to properly design for the what's it called for the fintech space. So I'd say this, right. Let's just have that 1 minute silence for for companies who go through the whole financial boa because like okay, there's a new regulation to follow. It's a stick. And there's just CBN one morning waking up and saying, all right, 1, 2, 3, you're off the market. So typically that's just a space. So 1 minute silence for them. I think it's enough. All right, so designing for the fintech space. As a designer, one thing first, you have to hello. Need to be sure. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Okay, so designing for fintech, like as a designer, you have your users. Sorry, I think I broke off.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, all right. So that's fine. So you have to understand what's it called. You have to understand who the users are. Like you have to define the users that you're targeting. Very importantly, usually in the fintech space, there are like four categories of users. You are either designing for business to business case for banks, which simply means solving financial what's it called solving in the financial space for banks, and you're either bidding for business clients, right? The likes of service providers are those who are bidding for business clients. Flutterwave is bidding for business clients. The likes of Joe and Doja, the likes of Okra, the likes of Mono, bidding for business clients who want to what's it called, who want to use their products to serve as leverage to solve other people's problems on their own product also. So you are either solving for small businesses also, direct to business, the likes of any send and receive funds. You're either solving for small businesses, and typically we have a lot of players in that space to catering for payments for businesses. So they are simply just on the business end. And we also have those who are consumer focused, like major consumer focused, direct to consumer, simply just focusing on dealing with consumers, likes of what's it called, of Kuda banks and carbon appers, Figo payments, and yeah, a whole bunch of people who are simply just consumer focused. So typically in this space, we have much more products who are consumers and small business focused rather than what's it called business and bank focused. I think one of the examples I can give for B2B for banks is Core. They are simply just banking as a service, right? So they simply just provide the entire banking infrastructures and allow people go through those infrastructures to build their products. So understanding the products you're designing for and your audience, that's one amazingly important thing. Something that we have to, what's it called, take into major consideration. So I have to, what's it called, I have two flows right here. And I'm just going to take it through, right? So that we understand one, we understand the product focus. Secondly, the design, the audience we are designing for. So typically the first one is a new banking. Banking the unbanked. We know who carries that name, banking the unbanked. So simply they are just giving digital access to traditional banking services, and they have an age audience of between what's it called? The audience are between the ages of 18 to 45. So I'm going to base this onboarding on what is required for what's it called, creating an account. So typically for you to create an account, not necessarily use their service, right? Simply just create an account. So the requirement will probably be your full name, your email, your password, your phone number, and your BVN verification. That is your entire what's called. That is the entire details that you need for a proper onboarding process. So typically that's a process for the new bank, which is simply just a digital bank. Now we look at the second case, which is a loan app. They are both in the fintech industry, but they run different services. So the loan app, I don't know, I'm trying to look for a name, but I can't name one specifically, is looking to disrupt the traditional loan request system where you go to the bank and then you request money and then they ask you, hey, what's your salary for last month? Go and print out your statement of account. Hey, you have to have like 4 or 5 guarantors, you have to have 10 guarantors, your guarantor must be a civil servant, must be earning above. You understand? All those, simply just trying to cut you the stress of walking into that bank and facing that customer, what is it called, whatever they are, agents, and spend the entire of your time while you could simply just do it in minutes. They're targeting people within 20 to 32 because they feel like, oh, those are like the active work like circle of people that they want to target. That's Gen Z. the requirements basically for them would differ from the traditional banking, which would probably come with the first three same: full name, email, password, phone number. They would require your address because at this point in time, their level of compliance and verification is way different from a traditional digital bank. They need to be sure of where you live. They need to be sure of who your next of kin is, so that typically when they want to send that their message, they can know who to send it to. Your relative, so is owing us this. Kindly cut him loose or take him to the police station. So typically on that end, right, we have those informations extending. Now they want to know your occupational details, simply how much you earn and how much you could pay back. They want to know your bank details. Oh, fine, do we remove this at the end of the month, or just for surety, or just insurance that, oh, our money is not, what's it called, disappearing. So seeing these two players in the fintech space, they are both fintech apps. They are both fintech products. They all are solving a product in finance using the technology, but they work for different audience and they work in different space. So typically understanding what product you are designing for and understanding who you are designing it for is an important requirement to understand while you are designing in the fintech space. Very much importantly, I'm going to use a straightforward example. So I think before joining Arpas, which is like currently where I work, I I had a lot of projects in the e-commerce space, and I was pretty much building fintech products and building, like, being able to understand how the whole fintech for me then was like send money, receive money, invest money, buy this, buy that, bill payments, like our typical rubbish fintech now. What we consider as fintech, which is like send money, just pretty much the payment and the lending system of fintech itself. So when I joined in, I realized something was changing, right? At this point in time, yeah, it was fintech, right? It was dealing in finance, but there were more. Now I had to consider compliance, which was simply just a way of understanding businesses, collecting their details and making sure that they are properly registered on the businesses, on the what's called on the products, to perform certain business actions according to some regulatory bodies. At this point in time, now I needed to understand how CAC worked, how they were being verified, building a portal for them to log in their details, understanding the whole issues of settlement. It was just another step forward into what I did consider as traditional, what's it called, fintech. So pretty much you understanding that space and your audience would enable you adapt into the system which you are like meant to build. So moving forward, I would say understanding the flow, right? I think I did mention this when we started. Understanding the flow, the regulators and the service flow. So typically, right, I would say this. I worked across two different fintech products, and I think one of the major things that did help why designing for fintech is really understanding those players and watching your developers implement those designs that you have made. The first flow, which is like the first process, was onboarding. That was my design flow for onboarding. My splash screen ran into sign up, email verification, phone number verification, BVN verification, and dashboard. So I was pretty much mad at the people when they said, put BVN, put BVN. You have to verify BVN before dashboard, because I didn't understand one thing, that if I am signing up screen includes my first name, my last name, and they wanted this separately. So it wasn't like a case of write full name. Email, you have to enter your password, you have to confirm your password. It was becoming a long process. And then I had to ask, why? Because pretty much onboarding was supposed to like be a short process. And the question was, so our service provider does this thing. We need an email verification to be sure that the person is the owner of the email. We need a phone number verification to be sure that that person is also is also the owner of the phone number. Typical, right? And our service provider requires a BVN for us to create that virtual account or that wallet that you have, that you can copy your account number and send to someone and they can send money to your wallet. They needed a BVN to create it. So it was quite another process, right? And what I was left with was understanding how to simplify this process rather than having to cut out any of this process. If you removed the BVN verification process, it simply meant users were going to enter the dashboard. They were not going to have any accounts, no money, no account number, no wallet, nothing. So why create an account in the first place? And if you skipped email verification, you're not sure if the person entered the right email while registering. So it was definitely needed to understand this process and to understand the player at work. Now, here's the second onboarding process, right? Something that I met at a second process that I worked with. It had to do with splash screen, going to sign up. From sign up, I had the general email verification and phone number verification just to be sure that you owned the account. And at this point, it was going to the dashboard straight. And then I asked why, and they said, "Oh, pretty much I drew this flow, right? And while I was drawing the flow, and I asked questions from from the product owner and the developers on board. They did say this. They said, "Oh, fine. Our service provider creates an account or a wallet with the person's phone number, which simply meant they were steps ahead. We didn't need BVN verification for creating that wallet. The only thing that BVN was needed was to increase the limit, and that was for security purpose. We simply meant, oh, so anybody without a BVN verification could do transactions between 20K to 50K a day. But beyond that, you would need an account upgrade to verify that you are capable of moving quite a large sum of money, which was probably limited at probably 200 or 500K per day. And then you needed another level of verification to go forward. So understanding the regulators and the services that are needed for that product to fly is going to help you understand what flow you are going to go through. At this point in time, it simply meant shorter onboarding for for the users and a stepwise unveiling process to go through account updates. It simply means anybody could use the system for a first time without having to worry about BVN verification. So at this point, it's very important for us as designers while building products to understand those regulatory services, not just fintech alone, but in every other space, to understand the flow and to understand those who play parts in those details that we need. And also, just to chip in, right, each of this process flow is costing the business quite a sum of money. So typically, right, linked over like my experience that it would take a company between 15 naira to 18 naira to onboard a user. Which simply means a company loses between 15 naira to 18 naira on service providers to onboard you who haven't even performed one single action on their platform. Which is why companies would really need to run at loss, need liquidity. Who are those providing money for us to even run first before now gaining money back through transaction fees? So typically, it simply means, while you could do your whole sign up screen, your verification screens, and these screens either on one page, then you now decide to split the process and split it into 4 pages. One, you are extending the time of completion of action. That's for the user. And secondly, it simply means, the company keeps losing more money because they have to keep making so many other making so many other calls, like the likes of API calls and some other requirements just to move forward on the process. So I'd like to do a mic check again to be sure that I'm here.
Yeah, we can hear you, but your screen is out.
Oh, okay. How about now? Is it back?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. I'll just try share again. I think. Yeah.
It's coming up now.
Okay. Let me know when you can see.
You can see it now.
All right, fine, thank you. So understanding those flow are very, very important for us as designers because one, those are the leverage, right? One, I'm going to say that's one leverage to professionalism. Secondly, leverage to charging. You show that you're professional at what you do. You understand the system. You can build this thing by asking the right questions. Means that you can charge more and you command more money. So typically that's like how it works in the fintech space. Understanding the flow and the regulators. Why a person might have BVM before this is probably because they're using Ledger or because they're using Flutterwave. So typically understanding those services that are going to be used is going to be important in understanding that flow. So I'm going to move next to next point, which is simply shorten the journey. Very important for us as users, right? Why is it financial? It's a financial system, right? We know the proper financial system, but we are trying to solve this problem and reduce the flow through what's it called through verification. So typically, right, best onboarding practices would say, oh, you have to remove all the obstacles between the new customers and the app, which simply means, oh, if it was possible, use email and password. Simple, just use email, full name, email, and password to sign up and just go your way. But sadly, in fintech, it's not so possible because there are KYC policies that says, hey, you need these people's BVN before you can get this done. Hey, you need these people's phone number before you can get this done. So let's look at how these policies affect what's it called, how they affect the flow of product. So I have a flow below, but if you look at these requirements in the design, right, they contradict what the entire product flow says. A, just shorten the journey. But at the point of shortening the journey, you have to look at the business end, which is simply means meet compliance, meet this KYC standards, meet what is required at this end, right? So I'm taking a look at that flow again, right? It simply says, oh, splash screen, sign up, email verification. We simply need to what's it called to as a measure for the database that this person is an actual user. Now we come to phone number verification. For a system that needs phone number to create an account, that's two new screens, which simply means a screen where you put in your phone number and say, hey, this is my phone number, send it. And then a screen where you enter the OTP that has been sent to that phone number. That's two screens already, right? We have the BVN verification, a screen where you enter your BVN, and also a screen where you get your BVN OTP. They send a BVN OTP to the phone number that is associated with that account. So typically, we have to understand that in fintech, well, yeah, we still have to make that effort to shorten the flow. But even at that, do not at the expense of the regulation that needs to be done or the KYC policies that needs to be completed, put the business at risk or at a loss. So yeah, that's why I said you need violence here. You need to know at that point where, oh, fine, this is just business requirements, and we have to find a way around it. But also there are situations where you could make it better. How? We talk about the flow where I'm going to track back to a previous slide which I showed, right? A point where after the dashboard, I would need a my BVN verification for my account update. Now, this verification are simply just part of a of creating a profile, right? So typically, I'm bringing this screenshot from our product at our house. It simply says, oh, you completed 70% of your profile information, right? You progressively get all the data that you need and you tie them to certain actions. It simply means that if you've not completed this, this profile, you are not accessible to certain benefits on the product. So at that point where the user needs those benefits, then you could progressively review those actions that are needed to be taken. Complete your profile information. While they decide to complete their profile information, they actually do their BVN verification. So it's now it's an urgent need in time. This person has been on the product, has been able to do the basic things that the product offers. So they need to do something much more, and then they progressively move to that stage. Another thing is link your bank cards. So typically, right, on an onboarding flow or a sign up process, you could have added it and say, okay, so add a bank card here. But it would simply have just made the time to completing the task, which is simply getting to the dashboard and either performing the major action, which could either be send money, receive money, pay bills, do this, do that on the system, right? It would simply have increased the number of screens, the number of details a user would have needed to fill. So progressively onboarding a user into understanding those requirements and those things that they need to do, right, is very, very important for a designer, and especially in the fintech space, where there are so much details that you need to get to perform even the slightest of actions. So for example, just on this side, I have the card section, right? Even if you, at this point you had skipped adding a bank card, right? You'd still need to add a bank card to complete certain actions. So it's as simple. Oh, you have no state cards, just add the card. And once it's added, it can be removed from your progressive bar in terms of profile informations that are needed to be completed or requirements or required by to meet certain standard. The third image here is simply just picking an image from Pampil, how they complete their verification process. So it simply means, oh, at this point in time, right? Once you sign up, you're on tier 1. Your daily limit is at 50K, and your maximum balance, right? The maximum amount you can have on your app is is 300K. So you have to complete a tier 2 verification, which at that point could need you to input your BVN to access a greater amount of transactions and another balance level, right? And probably at a tier 3, you need to upload a picture of your national ID card, upload your profile picture, upload your address or whatever to complete an unlimited balance and have a transaction limit of about 5 million naira. So typically, these steps, right? If I bombard you all at once and say, oh yeah, enter your BVN. Next thing, enter your profile picture. Next thing, snap your leg and put your fingerprints and use your identity card. You get overwhelmed and most likely never use that product. So it is very important that we save the violence for later and we progressively unleash or unveil those actions that needs to be taken to complete and to have a better design process. So okay, yeah. So I have shortened the journey, save the violence for later. All right, I don't know. There's a picture not showing there. But okay, yeah. So the picture here was supposed to be a CUDA way. So CUDA has this way of, I'm not so sure. All right, 1 minute. I might probably have to come into my main slide to see that. Okay, not here also. I don't know. I don't know why it's not displaying. But okay, 1 minute, sorry. All right, so Kuda adds this way of attending to what's called of shortening their journey and attending to you. Just saying, okay, can you add certain amount to your cards? No, you can't. When you are on these tiers, actions that you can perform because they are limited to certain things, right? And once you see this, there's that need for you to move forward and say, hey, get this done for me to get something better of the system. So typically that's it. And also we have to be security conscious. The bedrock of any financial system is security. Why you're not keeping your money in your house is because you believe that this is secure enough to keep that money for you. So when you are designing for what's it called for a fintech space, one of the most important thing is to what's it called is to consider security and to put a proof of security to a system. I'm going to start with my typical flow, right? Why do you have to verify your email? It's simply just a security purpose that, oh, this email belongs to this person that is creating this account. Why do I need to complete my phone number verification? Also to make sure that this belongs to the owner of this account. And it moves beyond that because most financial system, okay, I won't say most financial system. Okay, yeah, it wouldn't be bad to use the word most financial system face the risk of being hacked or their system being what's it called being what word would I use now? Their system being just looked into and what's it called and causing some loss in money, some loss in funds. Now, it's very important that one, your design protects the business and protects the users. Now, how do you do this? An example would be this first screen. I don't know, I couldn't just what's it called zoom into it, but you could see the password requirements below. It says 8 character minimum, 1 capital letter, must include phone number, and must include special characters. So you have to fill up this password requirement. Now, these password requirements are not to what's it called, are not to give you issues, right? They are simply to save to protect the user's account so that at that point where external forces who have access to either your mobile or whatever are having a difficult time getting into the algorithm of your password, it simply means, oh, the system of the business is also more safe. It simply means, oh, they don't have to face your issue of I held this money and somebody picked up this money. I think we were, I don't know, but I believe some of us did hear about the whole case and issue that happened with Kuda, with someone losing millions of funds and saying, hey, someone had access to my mobile and they did these transactions and I was expecting you to reverse it. So typically putting up these systems to help protect the business while also protecting the users, which are a major factor of the business, is very important for us as designers to consider. Another thing is this: you always wonder, why do I always have to enter transaction pin to complete this? Now, it's simply just saying, oh, you are validating this yourself and you need this to work. The last thing is showing an update BVN section, right? Where it's telling you, oh, the business here is making a disclaimer to security purpose for security purposes and saying we don't have access to your bank account or details. We don't. We just need this to meet up with what certain regulatory compliance that you must have your business, your BVN associated to this product to be able to use it and to have that financial control. So security is key. We have to put that I wouldn't say at the back of our mind, but as at the forefront of our reasoning when it comes to designing fintech products. Be security conscious. People are emotional when it comes to their money. Everyone is emotional. We are all emotional about the whole recent bullish thing the Bitcoin or crypto space, many people are still are still recovering. Some will never do. So people are very they are very emotional about their finance. One naira goes missing, the customer care section or the customer success people at those fintech companies are going to be the one heading the wall into understanding why their money is missing and making sure that there's no unrest, or there's no fallback or anything on business as regards why the money was missing. So security is important. Always design with security in mind. So here we would come to this point where we would talk about experience in fintech product itself. Clarity is the best experience, right? Clarity is the best experience. When we've all been in classes where we've loved one lecturer and hated the other, not because one was probably academically sound than the other, or one was better in any ways than the others. It was simply about sometimes it's simply about the clarity of how they put out their message. This person explains properly. This person just comes in and talks gibberish and walks away. So typically, right, even for fintech experience, where people are emotional, people are simply just adopting, people are moving away from the traditional method, it is very much important that you put clarity at the forefront. Clear messaging, clear writings, clear UX writings, clear requirements, clear title headers, action words, words that would push them into making an action. Add new cards, not we need a card. That's a contrast, right? So we need a card. We need a card. It's quite different from add a bank card, right? And it's quite different from add a new card. So you have to be very clear in expressions, and that is where major UX comes into place. UX, content writing, and UX writing as a whole. So you have to avoid terms and acronyms. If they are totally unavoidable, then you need to use tooltips. I would have brought in an example, but a company that I know that does that perfectly and does it like amazingly well is Paystack. Once there is any acronym, or there's a short word, or there's a what's it called, something that you probably would not be used to. An example would be individual businesses. There would be a tooltip to explain what individual businesses meant. Oh, this is businesses owned by one person and registered as a sole proprietor. You understand, right? Those are acronyms. So as much as you have acronyms, you need a tooltip to explain. Secondly, right? Yeah, just like I explained before, you need to write clear messages. A line of explanation helps. So an example would be a send money button that has a line of explanation that says send money to usernames of friends on our past, or send money via username, or send money via bank account. A simple line with clear messaging would help users understand how to perform certain actions and when they need certain actions. On the next end, fintech apps are not painting books. Avoid the urge to shalaye, avoid the urge to just like push colors anyhow, right? You have to apply proper contrast. I don't want to, because of the color that you used on your design app, miss out on seeing one zero, a zero that could change my account balance from 20 million naira to 2 million naira. No, that's that's just something huge, right? So you want to apply proper contrast, right? And I'm going to explain this in terms of the what's it called of the cryptocurrency space. They are also fintech products, right? In some ends, they have the fintech aspects to it. Um, we did realize at some point that while certain things were happening, right? When at the point when I started trading crypto, at some point, right, I I was also always what's it called, always worried. My money was decreasing, but I was still seeing a green arrow up. How? How will my money be decreasing and I'll still be seeing an arrow up that says plus 3.5% increase? How? You understand, right? So typically you need to understand how to convey this information. Or rather, my money would probably have increased in the portfolio and I would see a drop by 1% or 2% or 3%, and you have to now start wondering. That brings up the worrying aspects, right? Where those are not clear and they are not proper. Avoid too many colors. Just use colors that depict, right? Your signage is very important. If you are using arrow up, if the conventional for fintech app is arrow up left for outgoing money, please don't reinvent around it, right? There are places where you reinvent in fintech, but there are certain things that are simply just what's it called the user perception and understanding of things. Once you see red, you know it's a negative what's it called. So don't go and use red as what's it called as account balance. People will destabilize. Somebody who is hungry and needs to come into his account balance and is seeing red, or just a mistake that someone changed an hyphen into a minus. So that becomes a what's it called? That becomes a problem on its own end. So you have to be very, very important as regards. You have to be very, very cautious and put what's it called major importance into how and when you use colors so that you can avoid panic and stress to your users. Most importantly, and more importantly, and as important as every other thing that I've said, the business is also as important as the user. So while designing for fintech products, they would actually make money with more users on the board, but you also have to consider the business. And that's what makes you an excellent designer, when you can meet your business goals as well as meeting the user requirements. And I think this is where I draw the curtains on explaining or talking about designing for fintech and the fintech industry. Um, Thanks to everyone who stayed to the end. Thanks to everyone who were around. And yeah, you could reach out to me on the socials. Um, I'll be very much available to like talk with you or have a chat. So thank you, Eugene.
Thanks a
Eugene.
lot, Bobs. Really insightful session, I must say. So right about now, we're opening the floor for questions. If you have any question, drop on the chat or unmute your mic. Let us talk. Any questions from anyone?
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening, David.
Yeah, good evening, boss. Yeah. So, please, I have a question as regards the fintech industry. Is there any what's it called? Any book or any course or resources that one can check or access in order to understand more about the industry?
Okay, so I'm going to take it from this aspect, right?
Okay.
Straightforward from this end. The best you would do is understand the traditional system of doing things, right?
Okay.
So you simply need to understand traditional banking as a whole,
Okay.
understand
Tradition.
how you send money, understand
Okay.
how you make money, understand how insurance works. So the best you would do is read books on insurance if you are working in what's it called? Um, sorry, I'm just simply saying just read books on insurance, like in the space of insurance that allows you to understand how general insurance works, right? So when you
Okay.
start this for those process, then you would understand what requirements are needed. And at that
Okay.
point, you can now reach out to what's it called? Project owners or people who are also on this project to understand certain technical requirements. Um, Getting better in the field comes with working on working on projects and seeing those projects to the end. I totally understand that it can be difficult for freelancers to see and understand through to the end on how the entire system is built because at the early stage too, I simply would just design a fintech product and then at the end of the day, just ship it over to the client and I'm done. No follow back or no follow up to understand how these things were being implemented. And I think my first experience was when I worked for a design agency and I had to go in house and I would see while I was designing with my boss then and he would keep asking the developers, does this flow work? And I would be like, why? Why would you ask him, does this flow work? They're supposed to like work with what's in the design. That was simply when I understood the principles that had to do with what's it called APIs, connections, players in the systems, right? So typically, if you're going to design for an insurance industry, simply read up on insurance, read up on the players in the system, understand how these players work, understand what is required of them. Then it would help you understand how the product would work. So simply, fintech is simply just what's it called? Just improving technology, like improving the process through technology. The process is still more of what the traditional process would be. I hope I answered your question. At the year, right?
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you very much. I really appreciate.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have another question from Stephanie. She's saying the flow for a loan app showed earlier does not include BVN verification. Was that an indication that BVNs are not required for loan apps?
Not necessarily an indication, right, that BVNs are not required for loan app. So typically, right, it could simply be saved for later. I think at the point where I used Carbon to check what their system was, BVN verification was saved after was required after I had logged in into the dashboard. But they required certain information for me to start up as a whole, right? So I'm simply just explaining that okay, fine. This process have different requirements, and you need to just understand that industry to know what the requirements are. That's it from me, Eugene.
Okay, I hope that answered Steph's question. So are there any other questions? You could drop it on the chat box or you could unmute your mic. I'm guessing there are none. So I'm dropping the social media handles for our speaker. So you could kindly just follow him, reach out to him.
Yeah, good evening.
Any questions, just send a message. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Eugene and Forbes. Thanks so much for the presentation and the knowledge shared. Sorry, I have like a question because myself and a friend in UK, so we enrolled for this Afro Academy bootcamp also. With the option to design is for the fintech, metaverse, and what's it called? The Web3. So we chose fintech to design for. Are you there? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. So I just like need your like a guide and like an advice on what to do because we are starting tomorrow. That's 16th of May. So sorry, what's your advice and like a guide you can give to us?
Okay, so the first thing is this, right? You picked fintech. Great. The next thing would be what part of fintech? What are you working on in the fintech space? Are you working on new banking, which is simply just like improving transitional banking system? Are you working on payment solutions? Are you working on insurance solutions? Are you working on? So typically you need to pick that was it called that part of the product one. Secondly, if the bootcamp is for a UK space, it simply means you need to understand the fintech structure or the finance structure that is available for companies in the UK. Typically, the principles of sending money would simply have almost been the same, but there are simply certain discrepancies across different locations and across different zones. So, as such, you might need to be very sure if you are designing for fintech in the Nigerian space or you are designing for fintech in the European space, right? Where they have a slightly different culture as to the way that they have things moving in flows, right? So, as such, it is very important that you look into those factors and also research what was it called? Research what works for that space, what flow works, walk through that flow, and build something amazing out of it. Um, be sure that in everything that you do, you consider two things: your users first, and then you consider the business, because that's why the product exists in the first place, the business. So, most importantly, that's the advice that I would give. Um, I wouldn't talk about your choice of project because it's simply just the choice of what you're interested in doing. But please be sure to look into what part of fintech into how you can build a good solution out of it. That'll be all from me.
I hope that answered your question.
It's man.
Yes,
I do
yes,
hope
thanks.
I.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So I think this is as much as we can go for today. So the session is being recorded and will be available on our
Okay, so
channel during the week. And we'll ask Forbes to send his slide as well so you could have material too. So I will send a link. So we have a newsletter that is bi-weekly. So for updates from us and everything else design review related, just kindly sign up and you get a mail from us. So next week we're having another session with yet another great speaker. So do it to tune in again. Same time Sunday by 8 p.m. So that'll be all for tonight. Once again, Forbes, we really appreciate your time and your session was just amazing. Thank you.
thank you, Eugene. It's such a pleasure.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night, and you too.